Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Thespians, the podcast where we take a look at all things theatrical and dramatic. And today we've got Martha Ferguson here, the president of the Fort Mill Playhouse, here to chat about the theater scene in Fort Mill, what their current production season, and what it's like running a small-time theater company out of an old bank. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. It definitely helps with the algorithm, so I've heard, and we are looking to grow our channel. So any love and respect and support that you can give us would be greatly appreciated. But without further ado, let's dive in. Martha, how are you doing on this fine Saturday afternoon?
Well, thank you so much.
So the thing that I'm really curious about is that for the longest time, because I've only been to Fort Mill twice, and in my mind, I've always imagined Fort Mill as a place you kind of drive through to go to Columbia to Riverbanks Zoo, and the only other time I've ever been to Fort Mill was back in the 90s when my dad was just going to a dealership to check out pickup trucks. But what surprised me is the fact that the Fort Mill Playhouse has been around for a lot longer than I have, 44 years. And what's even more surprising is the fact that you guys operate out of an old building that used to be a bank. And when I looked it up on Google Street View, I just sat there. I'm like, there's no way that can be a theater. Like, but but again, that's kind of my big city bias coming through, because I'm so used to seeing theater companies operating theaters that take up entire city blocks. You know what I mean? Here in good old Charlotte. But can you go ahead and just dive in and just tell us a little bit about who you guys are, what you guys do, and what it's like running a theater company out of Fort Mill?
Sure. Yes, we are in a small venue at this present time. Actually, when they first started, and I was not here then, but they began under a circus tent. They used to perform, and they only had one show each year, so it was easier to do. But they set up on what is now the YMCA grounds here in Fort Mill, and that's where I've been told at that time, this was in 1980,
Mm-hmm.
Not the only thing to do in Fort Mill. So everybody was either involved in the show or they came to see it. So Fort Mill's changed quite a bit in the 44 years since we've been operating. Then after the tent, we moved into Fort Mill High School, which was newly built. As a matter of fact, some of the Playhouse board members helped design the auditorium in that high school, but knowing we were going to be performing there. Well, Fort Mill grew, Fort Mill grew, Fort Mill grew. So the high school needed the auditorium so much that we had a difficult time getting our time in there for rehearsals as well as the plays. So at that time, we moved to part of the old school that Springs owned, which Springs, is a big sponsor of ours at the very beginning as well, which was larger than the place we have now. Unfortunately, they decided to develop that area and tear what we were using down, because we were there for 13 years. And so we looked for a year before we had to get out for a place to be. And we found the place on Main Street, which we loved the location on Main Street. It's very tiny. And we took it thinking we would be there a year. Well, this is our 8th season in that venue. So we've been there a little longer than we had hoped. And it is small. And that's one of the challenges, finding plays that will fit on our stage, because it is small as well, of course, going along with the building. But we still are offering good plays. We have sellouts all the time. We've gone to 3 weekends rather than the standard 2, usually in community theaters, of performings. We've added another performance to one weekend, so we do 2 in one day. So we're up to 10 performances per show to fit everybody in who wants to come. So that's another burden we are bearing, is we have longer shows than most community theaters do. And it gets tiring, because you're there every performance for 10 evenings or afternoons. But anyway, we're surviving there, and we have attempted a capital campaign to raise money, hoping to have a permanent home. We were offered a building and given like 8 months to raise $1 million, and this was 7 years ago. It didn't happen, and then we had another. Deals have come and gone, and here we are still looking. So we hope to move to a permanent place sometime, but we are renting in this location. So
talk to me. what are the challenges of running a production in a space that's small? Because I imagine there are productions that you want to do, but just based on the size of the venue, you kind of get this feeling, we would like to, but it's just, it would take up more space than than we can afford, and we need that space to have an audience. What is that like?
Well, it can be frustrating, frankly. We can't do the big musicals. You mentioned in the pre-show we were talking about well-known musicals. Let's just say, throw out The Sound of Music as an example. It's too big for our stage. We can't get that many people on our stage. I mean, we're talking, if we get 6 to 8 people on our stage, that's a lot. This play coming up, we're putting 11 people on the stage, although it's rare that they're there all at the same time, so that helps. But that's enough for us to do something with that many.
What and imagine too that the set designs have got to be either minimalistic or minimal as well.
That is our preference.
Yeah.
We can do small musicals, and we do them. We do one per season, but there's also some that want not only a pianist but a guitar player or a drummer as well. Well, the last time we did that, we had the drummer off stage. You couldn't even see him, and he wasn't even with the other musicians. But it worked. But it was not ideal. Let's put it that way. So.
Yeah. Well, another thing that crossed my mind too, when I was reading about this was was that with some theater companies, sometimes they kind of reach out to other larger venues and see, hey, would it be okay if we booked the space for 2 or 3 weeks while we have these shows? Has that ever occurred, or do you mainly just keep it at your main location for the time being?
We keep everything at our location, frankly, because we have not found a location big enough that we can afford. People mention the schools in Fort Mill, which we have a few now, but and this has been years ago since I've checked, but their rate was like $60 an hour. Well, you add that up, the time we need it, and the time for rehearsal, you have to get in there at least for a week to rehearse in a new space. Even you can't just run in there and perform. Not cheap, and there's not really anywhere big enough other than schools. So we've talked to some churches, but they want to, not censor, but they want to know what we're doing, and they want approval of that. And no, we're not interested in that either. So.
Right. So I was watching a video that was posted on the website, and there was a location near downtown Fort Mill that you guys were looking at. But you mentioned that since has kind of fallen through. Can you maybe speak a little bit as to what are your plans for either possibly finding a new place or building a new location, and if you're trying your best to kind of keep it in Fort Mill, or if there are any plans in the future to kind of have it Fort Mill adjacent?
Well, both. We're open to both at this point. We're still looking. Frankly, my preference is a building, because we can get grants. Renovate a building. If we buy a piece of property and build, we cannot get grants. So that's a drawback to that. But we looked at a piece of property just recently, suited our needs as far as size, and the price was in our range. But we would have to get water and sewer in there, and we'd have to get it rezoned. Well, those two things alone could cost, $150,000, and we may not get the zoning. So then where would we be?
Right.
That's our problem. It's just finding that right place. And of course, the longer we wait, unfortunately, the more expensive everything's becoming. So.
And especially in a place like Fort Mill, because being within the Charlotte area, I mean, it's expanding quite rapidly, and in a decision where do we try to accommodate the community playhouse, or do we use this to build more commercial space? I mean, sadly, they're going to try to go for the commercial space.
Because frankly, we're nonprofit, so we're not a tax base for them. So that's a big drawback to getting any help. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, which actually leads me to my next question. So what has the art scene been like in Fort Mill? Has the community playhouse worked to kind of cultivate a bigger appreciation, or or do you sometimes find yourself fighting an uphill battle to try to get people to appreciate what you guys are doing for the community?
Both. On both, because there's a certain base we have. We have memberships, and these are faithful people who pay yearly, and their memberships are just meaning they get a number of tickets to get into the shows. We have our faithful advertisers in our programs, and we have our sponsors. But there's also that part of Fort Mill and people who have no interest in the theater, whether they have ever been to the theater before, doesn't seem to matter. And I always say if we there one time they would return, because a lot of people don't understand what it is. I'm not sure what they think theater is, but it's not a boring evening by any means. And we put a lot of talent on our stage, and it's quite impressive. So I think we have discovered it's people who are actually interested in theater who will look us up or look to see if they're new to the area. Does Fort Mill have a community theater? And then they find us that way, and we've gotten people that way. But otherwise, you mentioned our small space, being interested in it. Since we're on Main Street, we have a lot of people walking by, and when we're open or something's going on, some kind of festival we're taking part in, just ask if they can look in, because they're like you, they don't understand how we could have put a theater in that small building that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's quite cozy and comfortable. So it's a lovely old building. We just wish it was larger. That's all.
So have there been any like campaigns or anything similar to where you're trying to get the community playhouse, out into the public and make these people aware that you guys exist, and kind of encourage them to come out and just see what you're doing, and and if they like what they see, kind of keep coming back for more, and tell your family and friends about it?
Yes, we have. Unfortunately, the lack of newspapers and that kind of advertising, because that was our backbone originally. Fort Mill had a weekly newspaper, but everybody got it and everybody read it. Now everything's on social media. So we try that, people aware of us and advertise our plays. So we're working on it. It's very difficult to do. Like I say, if they've never been to a theater, they just, I'm not interested in that, whether they know anything about it or not. So
yeah, and that is a struggle with a lot of community theaters, is because the biggest challenge is just making your presence known. So I definitely I can definitely understand where y'all are coming from. Have you have you like reached out to other community theaters in the area to kind of talk about collaboration, or kind of just pick their brains and see what they're doing and what lessons you could probably learn from their past?
we have some very close relationships with nearby theaters. Unfortunately, a lot of them are struggling with having their own place as well. Rock Hill, I know, has lost their home some years ago and are still looking. Lancaster depends on the university there to help them, which is a great, place, auditorium there. Others are just like us. They're actually they envy us, because we do have a home. We are in the same place every performance. Like you said earlier, a lot of people seem to travel around or find places where they can perform. At least we don't have that. We do have that home. So
yeah. So another thing I want to bring up, because it seems like when from the 1980s probably up until the mid 2000s, it seemed like it looked like there was a period of growth. Like you guys were, you guys started off in in a tent and were going through all these venues, but you eventually found a home, and it sounds like that this was a period where where you guys were kind of hitting your stride. I'm guessing, and please feel free to correct me. I'm guessing after the pandemic, things have kind of have taken a turn for the worse. Have they?
no, actually, now we were closed
Okay.
a long time with the pandemic. It seemed like
Mhm.
we came back, and once people got over the fear of being in a crowded place again, we have picked back up, and we have sold out audiences now. So
Okay.
drawback to us is our size. It's not inexperienced by any means. We know what we're doing after 44 years. We know what appeals to our audiences, but people think we're too small. Like I say, just getting them in the door. If we can just get them in the door, we got them. So that's the main thing.
Right. So I do want to shift gears a little bit, and I do want to talk about your current season because starting next month you guys are going to be producing The Curious Savage, and then you guys are doing a Twisted Christmas Carol in December. Can you talk a little bit about both of these shows and what the process has been like to kind of get everything planned and ready? Because the first show for The Curious Savage is going to be in mid-September on the 20th.
Correct. And they've been at rehearsals for probably 3 weeks now, or 4 weeks after having auditions. Our calendar year is a little different from other theaters. We go by the calendar. Others go by from fall through the next August for their season.
Right.
So start out with reading committee who reads lots and lots of plays, trying to find something that is suitable to our space and suitable for our audiences. So anyway, this is our 4th play of the season coming up, and then the Christmas show will wrap up our season for 2024. So The Curious Savage is a fun play. It's take place in the 1950s, and 3 grown adult stepchildren have put their wealthy stepmother into a institution so that she will not be spending any more of their inheritance. So it's a little bit of good versus evil, and it's not necessarily a belly laugh, but it has some humorous moments in it. So it is a comedy basically. So
right.
Like I say, we're putting 11 people on the stage for this one, so it's going to be interesting to see how this works.
Now, So how did you come about selecting this particular play? Because it definitely fits the season, of not only fall but Halloween. With the idea of putting someone in a mental hospital and the sort of black humor that kind of comes around it. So what made you decide like this was the production to go with rather than Dracula or Frankenstein or something about ghosts, for instance?
Really pick it for Halloween. We read plays until we find those we like and that will fit our stage, and then we just decide what fits best into the calendar, and that's the one we chose for the fall. We weren't necessarily looking for Halloween-ish play, but it just worked out that way. So
it was a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. Okay. So you did mention something quite curious. You mentioned that there was a reading committee. Can you talk about like how you guys go about picking a reading committee and how you guys go about picking these finding these plays? Like, do you guys like draw up a list, or do you guys just go to the local library or bookstore and just look for plays and kind of just flip through and figure out, well, I guess we could do this, or maybe we could try that?
Well, basically, it's probably online. Whoever's the chair of the committee goes through. First of all, what we have to look at is how many people are in the cast. We can't do this. And after that, then we either read a little bit about it online, or she orders the script, and we all take a turn reading it and seeing how we like it and fit our theater.
Gotcha. And then for December, y'all are doing a Twisted Christmas Carol, which you can never go wrong. But I kind of like the fact that this is set in Texas, and you've got a twister in there, hence the name, A Twisted Christmas Carol. Now, I imagine with something like that, I mean, you are going to have to deal with special effects, especially when it comes to a tornado. So do you kind of anticipate this might be a bit of a production challenge for y'all to deal with?
It's probably going to be a Christmas reading of the play, which means we can do larger plays that way, because they just stand up there on the stage and they are acting with their voice, but there's no set or movement or anything like that. They're just standing in front of a microphone speaking to the audience. And we've been quite successful with these. People enjoy them more than they think they would. So that's why there's only 3 performances of that show. It's going to be a reading rather than act it out. But we do have a wonderful sound and light person who finds us all those sound effects and that we use for whatever is needed in our plays. So he does a great job for us.
I kind of like that, because you're actually the first person to actually say you put on a production the same way that they would put on a radio drama from back in the 30s and 40s. Is this something that that's new to you, or is it something that you guys have been doing for quite a while now?
We've been doing it in 3 or 4 years now. There's other theaters who do this. There's a place in Waxhaw that does the readings, and we got it from them, the idea from them. But we're still, it's amazing how much you can get out. Like you say, it is based on the old radio programs, but it's amazing how much you can get out of the play from people just acting with their voices. So, I mean, it's truly actors up there doing this. It's not just people picked out of the audience or anything. So
yeah.
Been quite successful, yes.
So that actually does lead me to the next point. So what is it like, working with talent in the Fort Mill area? Are you surprised at the quality of talent that you find whenever you hold these auditions and you do these rehearsals? Because with a small town, you wouldn't think, oh, there's nobody here would ever be interested in acting or dramatic readings or anything like that. But when you get them on stage, it's like, wow, like, where have you been this entire time?
Yes. Well, and we get them from all over. We get them, a lot of people come in from Charlotte. People who enjoy acting, if it's within their driving distance and they're interested in the part, they're going to do it. I have found out. And these are people who don't get paid one penny for doing this. They just love it. And I mean, we're talking 6 to 8 weeks of rehearsals, 4 nights a week maybe, and then 3 weekends of shows. So they really dedicate a lot of time to this, and they love it. And we had, I think we had 29 people audition for this last play. So yeah, the talent's out there. We just can't use everybody at the same time. So
yeah. So talk to me about that, because because it's never a problem really to have too much talent, but what is it like to to tell someone who you think is good that they're not what you're looking for this production? I mean, is it one of those things where you kind of just have to get on with it, or do you kind of feel a bit emotional because you can sort of understand where they're coming from? Like, man, like, I would really like to have this person in this role, but they're not quite what I'm looking for.
oh yes, and thank goodness that's the director's job, it's not mine. So,
Right.
but I'm sure it's not easy, and but people who have done this for a while understand that sometimes, like you say, it's not their talent necessarily. Maybe they look too old for the part. Maybe they look too young. Maybe they're trying to find somebody who looks like siblings. It can be various reasons why they get turned down. So most people are very understanding about it and understand that they can't do everything they audition for. So, but I'm sure it's not easy for the directors either. So,
Yeah, exactly. And for the most part, you're handling the admin stuff, so you're not having to go up there and say, well, I've got some bad news for you today.
exactly. Exactly.
So can you talk about what you do at the community Playhouse? Like, what is your role, and what is it like running a theater company on a day-to-day basis? Like, what kind of responsibilities goes into this role?
It varies quite a bit. It's like they're saying, it's like herding cats. I feel like my job most days are just keeping up with the details that everybody else is supposed to be doing or taking care of. It's, somebody calls me, okay, the pump sump's not working at the theater. Somebody needs to call the landlord. Okay. And then it can be the lights were left on, or it can be, okay, what are we doing? What's our next production? And, how's this planned? It's just, it varies. So that's what keeps it interesting and what keeps me doing this, I guess. It's not the same thing on a daily basis by any means. It just changes all the time as the questions I get asked.
Right. But but you're the main person that people mainly turn to if anything goes wrong, whether it's, like you said, whether it's something going wrong with the utilities or an admin question, right?
Correct. And you mentioned COVID. Oh, and we still, even after we opened back up after COVID, if
Hmm.
somebody down with COVID, we had to close. I mean, we couldn't go on. We don't have backups for our actors by any means. So it would be, that was a decision I would have to make and then get the word out to everybody who was planning to attend that particular performance, whether we could reschedule. I mean, it's all this, yeah, it just goes down the line like dominoes. Okay, we have to do this, this, and this in order to get there. So there was some of that too when we came back. So it's just
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And I was going to say, because with theater directors, the one common denominator in all of them is the fact that they is that when they enter the role, their expectation is they're going to play a more proactive role in the creative aspect, but they kind of find themselves mired more and more in admin and business. Is that was that an expectation you had when you first stepped into the role?
No, I knew what I was getting into. I hire the directors, but other than that, I don't have anything to do with the artistic side of it unless they ask a question. Can we do this or should we do this?
Mhm.
What audience? And then I can answer that and help them with that. But otherwise, no, that's up to the directors. So
Gotcha. Did you come from an arts background? Did you like study theater or anything like that?
I didn't get involved in theater, and I wasn't even involved. I shouldn't say that. I attended plays when I was in college. That was the first time because my high school was very small. We didn't even have a theater there, and then I started attending them when we moved to Fort Mill, and that's what got me. One of my neighbors was on the board and asked me if I would be interested, and I took it. And I warned him I didn't know anything about theater, and he said, "That's fine. That's what we want." Okay, you got me. So that was about 20 years ago. So I've been there since.
So how did you end up as president of the community playhouse then?
Well, let's put it this way. It's not like it's this great honor that I ran for.
Right.
It's basically, okay, who's going to do this for us? So, but once I did it, I did enjoy it. And I've been hanging in there with it. So I can't last forever, though. I'm getting old, I'm getting tired. So somebody's going to take over sooner or later. So
Right. But I imagine during that time you've seen a lot of a lot of great talent come through and just chatting and just getting to know people. Um, so one of the big questions that I've asked a lot of community theaters directors is, do you, have there been any efforts or any programs to kind of collaborate with the local town in the area? And I guess to be more specific, do you guys kind of have like programs or workshops trying to bring out like writing talent to kind of encourage them to not only teach their craft but possibly either in the near or not too distant future kind of collaborate on staging something that they've written?
we have had workshops that we had a writer teach writing, playwriting. Um, it was not that popular, but the ones who took it did enjoy it. Uh, she's offered to do that again for us, and we're working on that. And we may do another workshop soon on that. As far as original plays, we welcome people to send us their play. We read whatever people send and decide whether it will work for us or not. We have not gone out and looked for that, but they do come to us asking if we would read their play or whatever. So we do that. We're welcome that. So
Gotcha. Now, one thing that did catch my eye is the fact that is the fact that you guys do have programs or camps where you guys are basically offering classes for youngsters to learn the art of performance. And one of the camps that caught my eye was the improv camp with Paul Marks, who is set to make an appearance on this show in the next 2 weeks.
oh, okay.
So I'm really excited about having come on and talk about that. But I was gonna say, so what is it like? So can you talk about what it's like having these camps and what it's like to um, bring bring these instructors in to kind of teach the art of theater to young children, because it kind of circles back to what I was asking earlier about how do you guys bring theater and arts appreciation to the community, you know?
Okay. Yeah, we started our summer camp, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. And they've become quite popular. Unfortunately, again, due to our size, we can only take so many. We're very limited in the numbers we can take. But the kids love it. They do a performance at the end of camp. The actors camp, which is 2 weeks of camp, we've started their finales in the evenings, just like a regular show. They do theirs Friday and Saturday night at the end of camp. And the parents love it. The kids love it. So we are trying to train them. Unfortunately, we are so small right now. Our venue is so small that we are unable to do children's productions like we used to. We always did a children's production every summer until we tried it the first year we were on Main Street, and we haven't done it again because most children's plays are written for a large number, like big musicals or something. We're talking 20 to 30 kids. We can do that. Even if we can get them all on stage, we can't get them backstage. So it's just, we really would love to get back into that because we miss doing that, because we have watched kids grow from being in those to, well, there's one we know now that's acting in New York. Another is backstage at a popular theater. So we enjoy watching that. We miss that, but the kids love camp, and that's kind of been our answer to getting the kids involved. And people keep asking, parents keep asking, do we have classes? Can they continue this? And we just haven't gotten into that. We just don't have enough people to handle everything that the community wants. We have a problem with that as well. So,
Right, and it all just boils down to the fact that you don't have enough space. Is it I mean, do you know if it's going to continue next year or if it might be put on hiatus? Can you talk? Is that something you can even say, or?
Summer camps will definitely continue. It's very popular. Very popular.
So how do you go? So another thing I want to ask is, how do you guys go about getting the instructors for these camps? Because, like I said, Paul Marks, I checked out his stuff. He did a TED talk. He's got a reputation behind him. So how do you guys go about recruiting these people to come and teach these camps?
We have a good relationship with Paul. He's worked with us for years. He rents our venue 12 times throughout the year or something. So we have a working relationship with him, and he's the one who offered to do the improv camp for us. And it's very popular. He had 17 kids in it this past summer. So and they love him, and they love the improv thing. So anyway, that's been very successful. He's been doing camps for us for a number of years now. So otherwise, I had to advertise this past year for the first time for a camp director, but it ended up being somebody who had worked with us before. She saw the ad and applied. So that worked out well. But we've never had a problem, frankly, finding people who are interested. We tend to stick a lot with teachers, young teachers who are teaching drama, but have the summers off. So that works out well for both of us. So that's worked out.
Gotcha. So what does the future hold for the community playhouse? Because you did mention the biggest challenge, obviously, is trying to make do with the tiny space that you're
that is
kind of restricted in.
Yes. We are trying. We still have hopes of a larger permanent home. We would like to leave. Those of us involved now would love to leave our stamp on it that give Fort Mill a big enough space for community theater for years to come, because it's a growing area. The money's here. If they would just give us some of that, we would be. Like I say, they're either interested in theater or they're not. So anyway, that's our dream, is to find our permanent home someday and a large enough space to put on all the productions we would like to put on. So,
and that's the main that's the main concern, because it sounds like there really isn't any other, because I haven't been around for 44 years. You guys have pretty much honed your skills and your chops. It's just the physical space itself. It all just keeps coming back to that.
Right, it does. And that's our biggest drawback right now, is our limited space. Yes.
Well, that's another thing too, because because here in North Carolina, we're running out of space because every single plot of land is being bought up and developed. But I always imagine with South Carolina, there's like a lot of wide open space. So when you mentioned that, I was like, that can't be right. Like South Carolina is like this huge big lot where you can just buy a plot of land and just build something, or you can find like a large enough building and convert that. But but obviously that isn't the case at all.
No, and if you've read anything, York County is one of the fastest growing counties there in the country. And you're right, they want to develop everywhere, and we can't ever seem to get in on that because we're not commercial. We don't have a tax base. Let's put it that way. We're nonprofits, so we don't have a lot to offer as far as that. Although we do draw people to the area. But we're still working on that, trying to get more help from the town and the county on that. So,
I mean, if push comes to shove, do you ever foresee a time, or do you think whoever takes over after you, do you think there will ever be the time where the community playhouse says, well, maybe the Fort Mill Community Playhouse is based in Fort Mill in name, but but due for whatever reasons, we might have to, I don't know, set up shop in Lancaster or Rock Hill or somewhere else? Or are you guys trying your best to be loyal and stay in Fort Mill as
stay in Fort Mill? Because frankly, if it moved, then it would be a different group running it. It wouldn't be Fort Mill people. So that's one of our things too. We're trying to keep it in Fort Mill. We don't have to be in the town limits, but we're trying to keep it in Fort Mill area anyway. So yeah, we've come up with that before too.
Right. The only reason why I ask is because it's because sometimes you may not be able to set up shop in the town itself, but you still want to have some association with it, even if it's in name only.
Correct. Yes.
So it's just one of those things I figured I might as well ask. Well, Martha, we're getting near the end of the episode, but before we sign off, if people want to learn more about the Fort Mill Community Playhouse, where can they go? How can they learn more about you and get in touch?
Well, like you did, go to our website, fortmillplayhouse.org. Tells our history, has all of our previous shows on there that we have done, as well as upcoming shows. That's your best thing. And if you would love to get involved, then please contact us. We have an email address you can find on our website, or through our website you can get there. We have Facebook, we have all that set up. Please come see us, get in touch with us. We would love to have you join us.
Excellent. Well, Martha, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to be on this little podcast. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. And if you're enjoying the content, remember to like, comment, subscribe. It goes a long way, and it shows us that you care not only about what we do, but the people who come on the show, because they could use some real love. But other than that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.